I think we're ready to go. So what I'm planning on doing here is I'm going to provide a little bit of a context around the RCMP approach to cybercrime, which is the founding information that led to the creation of the National Cybercrime Coordination Unit, which is not a center because Scott got that name first, so we're just a unit. And what the intent of that unit will be for Canadians, and actually the intent follows exactly from what the gaps were in the formulation and proposing of the NC3. So I'm going to skip to, I think I can do this, there we go. Okay, so cybercrime is poorly understood in Canada and around the world. I don't know if our folks before us talked about this. However, we can look at it from a perspective of that orange line in the middle of that ovoid. If you turned off the internet, all of those crimes to the right of that line would actually stop. Those are cyber crimes. The ones on the left of that line will continue. They've always been there. Money laundering, child sexual exploitation, murder, theft, fraud. Some of those are facilitated by the internet, but that doesn't mean that they're a cyber crime. So if I send somebody in this room a death threat by email, it's just a death threat. I could have done it by Canada Post. I could have done it by putting a bulletin board message out somewhere. I chose to do it by email. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a cybercrime. That'll be something that we have to overcome as we move forward in the center, is to both be able to take in those complaints that are not cybercrime purely, and be able to parse those out to the respective police of jurisdiction in order for them to deal with them as a normal crime that was facilitated. So that's the easy way to look at it, is the light switch idea, and that seems to be something that resonates with a lot of folks. And frankly, if you're taking notes like crazy, you don't have to, because all the slides will be available for you somehow by some technological tweeted or something at you, okay? So it is not my intent to read the slides as we run along, because I know that there's going to be some interesting material following me. I'm going to hit some of the high points in each of these slides. So I participate on a number of international fora, Five Eyes and Extra. Starting off in roughly 2013, Canada, myself, would show up to an international meeting, and the discussion would be about what those other countries are seeing in relation to cybercrime and victimization of the citizens in a law enforcement perspective of cybercrime in their countries. And we'd go around the table and would come to Canada. And Canada would go, don't know. That was me. Because we didn't. We know that there is cybercrime going out there, but much like this room here with my question at the beginning, it's vastly underreported. It is misunderstood. And frankly, we don't have the systems to capture it anyways. So if somebody were to report it as a fraud, would it be captured as coming through the internet? Or would it be just a fraud writ large that would go into our uniform crime reporting system? And it's the second answer. So we can't parse it out by cyber-enabled or not. Our investigative capacity was minimal. We did have one team that was completely overcome by Heartbleed when that happened. A couple other subsequent files that were brought to us on the international front. You may have heard of Avalanche. You may have heard of a couple other takedowns. That just rode off that team. So all of the other stuff was basically getting piled in the queue. My role as the chair of the CACP, Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police E-Crime Committee, it was to bring cybercrime to the front of the Chiefs of Police in Canada, and for them to start waking up that this wasn't something that was just a niche thing. This was a cultural revolution happening in Canada, and criminality was moving there. So if we didn't get off our horses and chase them, we were going to left behind. And so we have a cybercrime strategy that's approved by the CACP, which is very closely mirrored to what public safety rolled out back in 2010 and subsequently renewed in 2015, and off we went. Lots of words on paper, sadly, few actions. Police never have enough, never going to have enough, okay. What do you stop doing to focus on cybercrime was the question that came back at us all the time. And my answer back was, well, look at the stats. Violent crime is going down. It appears that a lot of property crime is underreported. Move those people over to cyber. It wasn't a happy answer. Calgary, Halifax, Edmonton, OPP, Ottawa, Toronto have all moved in that direction. They're going virtual policing. They are going high visibility and presence on the internet for the young kids. So that's not just the young kids, but that's frankly the primary users. So that's, we are trying to move the big law enforcement organization around. So I'll skip quickly here. We got $108 million per year to fund a cybercrime center of excellence. So that's what we're working on, building towards. So I've given you a little bit of context, underreported, misunderstood. No way, if they did report it, to collate that information. No ability to react to it because, frankly, evidence-based means there has to be a whole pile of crimes for you to go and get new money. If there's no reporting, there's no crimes, there's no new money. Circular, such is life. The great work that public safety did in putting together the information from Canadians that allowed us to tell the story without some significant statistical reporting speaks volumes to how this was front and center to the government at the time and the citizens as we walked through this process. So the coordination unit, getting to it. I've already mentioned the price tag on it. The idea is multi. It's not an RCMP thing, although it is under the umbrella of the RCMP. The RCMP also supplies systemic and multi-agency resourcing that goes to all Canadian law enforcement. The Canadian Police Information Centre, which is basically, if you are wanted somewhere in Canada, your name is in that system. The RCMP manages and supports that on behalf of all law enforcement. It's called the National Police Service. Forensic Laboratories is another one. There's a variety of them. National Cybercrime Coordination Unit will be included among those that are national police services in support of all law enforcement in Canada. The idea is to have a single point of reporting for businesses and citizens to report cybercrime. And we already know that cybercrime could be my dog ate my iPhone, but we're going to have to parse those out. Once we get that, we're going to have to work on a little bit towards the analytical side. See what's going on. Connect the dots. Put things together. It would be un-Canadian and inefficient for 14 different police agencies to investigate the same kid in his mother's house in the basement in Romania who spammed 36,000 Canadians across Canada. By joining those dots, doing some analysis, and coordinating investigations, we can then, instead of, like I said, 14 different, we could have one coordinating on behalf of them all. So that'll be a little bit of an efficiency exercise that we're going to try and get going on this. So we have some before and afters. I guess I got slightly, whoops, I went too far. That's that Huawei thing. Stop. Good. So we have our current state and our future state. I've kind of outlined for you to those. The future state is the ability to have intelligence, to have analytical horsepower, to have an idea of what the actual victimization is, to communicate to citizens on a digital hygiene, which is one of the greatest risks. It is not security by default, therefore it is security by practice. And frankly, my parents are the worst offenders I've ever seen. And I'm certain I'm not alone. How do I actually get them to understand that, frankly, I think they should have a license to be on the internet and have a training course instead of just buy a computer at Best Buy, turn it on, plug it in, and go. So there's some systemic weaknesses and things we need to address there. One of the things that everyone is going to be suffering from is the lack and scarcity of well-trained and educated and practiced employees. This is across industry, across academia, and certainly across government. We're all fighting for the same kid. And I'm old enough I can say kid. So the 25-year-old with a computer science degree out there is being headhunted by 50 people. If that person is female and visible minority, it's 80 people with way faster processes than the RCMP to get them through the door. And sadly, we're going to lag on that. We have to do a little bit of work on that. So what happens when we get the calls come in? So the budget announcement included the formation of 2 additional cyber investigative teams. The location of those is yet to be finalized, but we believe that they will be in the major population centers of Ontario, Lower Horseshoe, Golden Horseshoe, and in Quebec, although that decision is not finalized yet. The scope of those investigative teams isn't to do the death threat by email, unless, of course, it was Justin Trudeau who got it, in which case they'll probably get saddled with that one. They are to investigate national scope cybercrimes, critical systems, critical pathways, critical networks, critical organizations, large-scale things. Those are what, like the Heartbleed, for example, those are what those teams will be focused on. There's only 3 of them. They're a combination of federal investigators and techies. The techies report to our technical operations side, under my side, and then the investigative arm, the regular members, will be reporting through federal policing. We work together on that to make sure that the investigators have the skill sets to know what is happening when they see it as they move forward. Because at this time, largely speaking, cops in Canada are oblivious to what is going on the internet, and we are not equipped to deal with it. And the example I've used many, many times is the mother who phones the detachment in, I don't know, Pelican Narrow somewhere and says, my kid just got the you-know-what kicked out of him behind the school and it's all over YouTube. Do something. The cop shows up and seizes the kid's phone because that's where the video seems to be. We're not equipped. We're changing that, but we're working on it. So the idea here, I think I've gotten through most of the bullets there, from where we are now, which is a lack of capacity to deal with those major investigations, to a place where we can deal with more than we are now. The additional piece of funding on this has gone towards something that we call cybercrime specialists, which we will embed in the major investigative units so that when the traditional drug importation is run through the dark web, gets encrypted and sent through WhatsApp, some investigator will be able to go, what did that mean? And find out right there, right next to them. So those will be civilian members embedded in the investigative units to guide those police officers who have yet to figure out what is going on in relation to the digital policing environment. So these are some of the partnerships that we have ongoing. We work with a lot of partners. Actually, both of them were sitting up here earlier this morning. We're learning from the lessons that the UK has gone forward. We're partnership very closely with CSIS and CSE on investigative techniques and abilities. We work with our Five Eyes partners up and down the SIGINT law enforcement ladder. And we have a bigger than just the Five Eyes cybercrime relationship with a lot of countries from Europe. The Dutch, the French, the Spanish, the Germans, I could name a raft of them. The idea here is to have a coalition of the willing to go after the kid in Bulgaria and to do something about it. And some of the countries have better abilities than others, i.e. the Australians can reach into Russia way easier than we can. And so we leverage those capabilities among the countries in order to make our Canadian citizens a little bit safer. I don't think I need to go into a great deal of depth on learning and training. The Canadian Police College has a raft of courses under the National Tech Crime Learning Institute. The FBI has a master's program that is available online for police officers. A lot of police forces have done a bunch of Cyber 101 courses, but that's really good for the frontline responders. The next layer up is the ones that we need to address, and those are the ones that are going to be able to say, I can get this evidence and not I understand how to turn on the phone. Those are 2 different skill sets that we're looking for. So we are on a fairly long timeline. The first piece will be the analytical engine and the systems in order to collect the reporting from the public. once the reports are being able to be parsed out and analyzed, then we'll be looking at how do we coordinate investigations? How do we keep industry involved? Because frankly, we're not going to arrest our way out of cybercrime. And the educational facilities that are around, we're going to have to leverage them. There's quite a few places in the NCCU that are devoted to other police forces, academia, and industry. And the hope is that we will be located close enough to the Cybersecurity Center so that we can share easily up and down the stairs things that are going on, like I said, on the defensive side, as opposed to what we then have to pick up later. So that's the conclusion of my comments, and we'll take questions at the end, I believe.